The top of the lot is on the cul-de-sac for, what is it, Blueberry Lane? But then the southern side appears to be on Skytop Drive. And I had a short, brief conversation with Gary Thomasberger, and he was saying that on a private road, you need a 30-foot front yard. And if that is the ruling, parking is not allowed in a front yard. And the parking on that proposed sort of bulb-shaped parking lot is right up against maybe only 3 feet from the edge of that 16.5-foot right-of-way. So that ruling will be important as to whether you can park, set up that end of that driveway as a parking lot. The 11 spaces are proposed, and it looks as if 9 of those are on existing pavement. 2 of them are brand new. They're marked numbers 10 and 11, and they're on the west side of the driveway. Those appear to be ones where they're going to build 2 new parking spaces. The other ones that are numbered 1 through 9 are striping on existing hardscape. They show that island is going to be removed and replaced with slate. We just wanted to have them make sure that it's at grade, because you'd need to drive over that island to get into spaces 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and you have to back out over that island. So if you're going to do this, it would need to be nice and flat there. And then on the landscaping, this is very similar to the prior case. We cited almost the same set of sections in this area. Section 27C2, a street tree every 40 feet along the frontage. C3, which requires that 25-foot landscape strip in the front yard. And then 27D, that requires landscaping of the parking lot perimeter. We noted that when you look on Google Maps aerial photography, along the west property line, that one that's 204 feet and 204.32 feet long, there's a hedgerow there that's not shown on the plan. They didn't draw that in. There's also a hedgerow along the cul-de-sac, so it would be shown as existing and proposed planting.
We're going to turn that mic off and see if it helps us.
Is that me?
Yes.
Sorry, the gong's broken. We went with feedback instead.
All right.
Start to come.
And the grading around that area of the 2 new parking spaces should be indicated. We also noted that there are sidewalks on Blueberry Lane, and they're not showing any sidewalk connecting the house and building, alongside of that driveway. Also, this area has a well and a septic system, and further along the application stage, we need evidence that water supply and septic disposal sewage are okay. They'll need to provide projected number of cars or bus trip ends, hours of operation. Usually on a cul-de-sac, site distance isn't a problem, but that should be shown. We're concerned that the retaining wall is shown inside the right-of-way for Skytop Drive, and if that Skytop Drive is needed for access to the 18 Skytop Road LLC owner that's to the south, how would that work? I did mention the proposed parking island. Comment 16 was that we believe this would be considered a type 2 action since it's the reuse of existing structure and there's no additions proposed. So those are our comments. Be happy to answer any questions.
I have a quick question with parking. If we're treating it as a non-residential use, we have been, I thought parking wasn't allowed in the front yard.
It is not. And that's why I raised this issue of, is Skytop Road causing this to have a front yard on the south and a front yard on the north?
Well, what about 10 and 11 too? Wouldn't, I mean, regardless of
Well, that's
Skytop, wouldn't?
behind, I believe that's behind the required front yard because it's
Okay.
supposed to be 40 feet from the street line. I'm looking for my scale.
Is it 40 feet as the crow flies, or is it 40 feet as the driveway goes? Straight.
Just a minute, I'll check it.
It sounds like we need an interpretation from Gary, if I'm hearing.
Yes.
Need multiple
It's
interpretations.
just in?
I see that part, that inch equals 20, we're about 70, 60, 70 feet from Blueberry Lane. From the iron pin to the beginning of spot 11 is like 64 feet.
Okay. Alright, so,
If you went to where it says Slate Walk, it's about 59 feet.
okay, so they're in.
Since this
But
is-
definitely on the other side, it's just 3 feet.
Yeah, okay. That's easy.
use as well, though. This is a mixed use, right? This is one half.
Yeah, my understanding is that, I presume the rabbi will also live there, so it's going to remain a dwelling residence and a shul at the same time.
Yeah, we'll talk about the uses later.
If I could just add one thing to that, we definitely need to do some more records research on this. I don't think that it's we did take a look at some tax maps before the county. Now, that's not necessarily a 100% positive indication of what's there, but the tax maps at the county show a dashed line there, which indicates there may be an easement. Not 100% sure at this point what's there. My question would be to the consultants is if this is an easement and not some type of actual full right-of-way that's been dedicated in any fashion or form, does the setback or does the front yard condition then actually become a condition we have to worry about if it's only an easement there and nothing else?
I would ask the attorney for some help with my answer, but I would suggest that Skytop Road lot must have been part of a subdivision and taken frontage on something. It said your surveyor put C note 4, and if you look in the note box, it says subject to a 16.5 right-of-way in favor of Falk. And I think it would be the job of the building inspector to sort of to decide where the frontage is for the other lot and whether this lot also takes frontage on.
Well, that part would be up to Gary, but it's incumbent upon the applicant to prove whether or not this was part of the subdivision or wasn't part of the subdivision. So I think what you need to do is come up with that position with some proof, and then we'll look at it, Gary will look at it, and then we'll make determinations from there. Okay.
Do we have any other questions for Jonathan?
Yeah, I just want a clarification, Jonathan, on your memo, under project summary, the last two sentences. It sounds like you're saying that the 1,000 square feet are part of the 3611, but under what the applicant filled out, he's saying that there's going to be a 3,611 square foot house plus a 1,000 square foot addition, correct?
I actually, again, I'm covering, so I don't even have that application.
Okay, in the application, it says, conversion of an existing 1,000 square foot addition to be used as a place of worship. The existing portion of the dwelling, 3,611 square feet, will continue to be utilized as a 4-bedroom, single-family dwelling. So it sounds like there's 3,611 and then 1,000.
And the word addition can be misleading. It says 1,000 square foot addition to be converted to shul. So my understanding is that 1,000 square foot already exists.
Yeah, that was mine as well, but
But it's not part of the
one of the things we
3,611.
can do here
I think it
is
is.
just good old multiplication. If you take a box that's 73 by 40, which is a rectangle that would take up that, you get 3,000. So, and there's an upstairs. I do believe we can ask the applicant to clarify exactly.
I think
The
we should.
only thing we
because
know
it's-
right now is what the applicant has said. And the applicant has said they're going to convert 1,000 square foot, and they're saying that 3,611 will remain as a single-family house. That's what they've said. I agree with Jonathan, but we don't know how many levels are, all that there. So the applicant ought to clarify that.
We can do that.
Okay.
If the application needs to be revised, we'll do so accordingly.
Any other questions for Jonathan?
I'm good right now.
Mr. Collins?
My comment is rather brief. I'm requesting that we have a detailed narrative that gives the size of the worship area, the hours of operation, and the required parking. And becoming, based upon an adjoining county, that the use of shuls are being extended beyond the pure religious, and sometime into the late evening hours for social gatherings, so it's important that we have that spelled out, what the hours of operation are on the shul, as this is not the only one. Secondly, the parking, that has been discussed. The parking area may also have to be treated, widened to accommodate some kind of emergency vehicle, turnaround for an ambulance, especially if all the spaces are occupied. The access drive, 14 feet, is fine for single-family residents, but we have a dual use on the property, it should be widened as we had in the previous application. And because of the location, because of the fact that there's some sidewalks in the area, almost up to the cul-de-sac, potential of having to extend the sidewalk onto this property, there may be a need for a sidewalk that's 88 and 5, etc. All those issues have to be looked at.
With hopping onto what John said, on your next submission, I'd like to see typically some applicants will take the turning radius of emergency vehicles and they will create a flow traffic pattern to make sure we can actually get emergency vehicles there. So just talk to Gary, he can give you the dimensions, length, turning radius, all that fun stuff. And on your next submission, let's make sure we can actually get what we need in there if needed, please.
Sure.
Any other questions for John?
The one question would be, because I'm seeing numbers and hearing from the previous application, like 2 lanes that are 12.5 feet wide, which, I don't think we would take exception to actually trying to provide it, but it might be overkill for, it seems like, this site.
There's a difference when you get over 20 cars parking. So they had a certain number of cars parking, so there were certain requirements that kicked in. Yours at this level of parking may not be the same. So you take a look at that first.
Okay, sure.
Dennis?
Yeah, well, most of the comments have been made already. The only thing I will confirm is that Gary has opined that when there's 2 principal uses, the lot area must be the sum of the 2 requirements. So this is 1.49 acres. It would require 3, so that's a variance or a waiver or variance, that's a new one. And as far as lot coverage, the single-family home allows coverage of, I'm sorry, its maximum is 20%. However, when you kick in the shoal has a maximum of 10%. So if it's 20% coverage, it was not a variance before, but adding a shoal would be a variance. So that would change things. So those are the two areas where I see there's clearly a waiver or a variance required. In terms of water and sewer, yeah, we'll need an engineer's report on how much water there's going to be used, how much wastewater is going to be discharged, what the condition of the existing septic system is. The old drawing that I have, they've shown the location of the septic tank, which is usually readily observed because you have cleanouts. And many times you get applications like this, they say presumed area, just a natural presumed area of the septic of the field. The drawing I have previously on the prior application, when this was subdivided, showed the presumed area right in the area of the parking. So it has moved. Where they have it shown, makes logical sense, because you typically would come out of a septic tank like that and basically discharge ahead, or perhaps a little bit to the side, but not swing it back and go back towards the structure, unless the soil conditions were something unusual. So the applicant's gonna have to review that, and just make sure that they have a field that's gonna function properly and can handle the addition wastewater. The access to, I also am concerned about the access down there, but we've already talked about that on Skytop. If that easement's, the right-of-way easement is available, it will have certain rights given to some others. If there's an encroachment on it, it's not your problem, but now they're asking you for something else. So ESO access and other things might kick in. Gotta make sure that that's resolved or handled to the extent that this application requires. This is above elevation 600, yeah, and would fall under ridge preservation. So whatever modifications or any modifications that are going to be made to the site would fall under that. If there's no modifications at all, then you have the house as it exists. There are some other comments in here. We just recommend that the applicant take a look at all the comments, try to incorporate everything that he can into the plan. And I'm not going to go on unless you have any questions.
Any questions for Dennis? Just from like, how far do you have to keep away from the septic system? So like, they had to like widen the driveway or something? Like,
Well, there's no, there's not a spatial requirement, I recall, on septic field. Septic fields, you don't want to put something over the top of them because you don't want to compress the soils. You want evapotranspiration to take place as well as percolating into the ground. So we wouldn't cover one.
is there like
It's
an
where they
accepted best practice that you don't normally?
It's not best practice to cover them. There are designs, as a matter of fact, Woodbury Common put one in underneath one of their fields. It didn't do so well, so they had to go to another thing. But there are septic systems that work underneath there, but they have to be designed that way. You don't design one for a normal absorption field and then put a parking lot on it years later, because it relies on a number of mechanisms to discharge the wastewater and to have it go either into groundwater or evapotranspiration, taking a portion of the flow.
Thank you. We have questions for Dennis?
But they should do an engineer's report on that, just provide you with
Yeah.
what information they can, and we can see whether it's adequate to support the additional facility.
Okay.
I have a question for the applicant. Are you planning to use the existing well that's there and the septic system, or are you going to redesign all this?
I believe the goal is to use the existing well that's there. I believe one of the comments was to actually provide water quality and quantity testing. So I know the applicant will be willing to do that, to prove that the well that's there is adequate for the proposed use.
And the septic system for 25 people, would that be able, plus the occupants of the house?
We'll need to quantify what's there and kind of maybe do some soil testing and work backwards to rate the system that's there now and see how that will be able to accommodate what's being proposed and whether or not it would need to be modified or enlarged.
Any other
Yeah,
questions?
I have a question for Dennis. Is there any problem with, I think you mentioned drainage would be into Cromwell Lake. Would there be any problem with, let's say, salting of the parking lot or some contamination issues?
Well, I don't think it's anything they can't address. The place exists right now, okay? Whether in fact they're going to use salt, that may be something we want to talk to them about. But they can plow, they can maintain it. The only new impervious area, they're doing a little donut in the center, if you will, and the 2 parking stalls. So it's a very small additional impervious coverage, I think of 1%, something in that order. So it's a fairly small increase. Quite frankly, if we do a soil erosion sediment control and they put in a grass swale or do something else, they'll probably improve it over what's discharging now with what we would require, but it's not going to be that much. So I think that it's manageable.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, when you come back again, you said you're gonna give us hours of operation, days a week, and buses. The other applicant didn't have buses. Is this one going to have bus transportation? No?
Just when you submit your narrative, just make sure all that, same questions that we went with the other applicant, you know, childcare, buses, other operations other than daily prayer and stuff like that, just so we get a better idea of what's going on there.
And the only other thing is, when he comes back with the new drawing, handicap is going to be addressed?
It was one of the comments on the letters. We have no.
Yeah, I had made a comment that you need handicap parking, and is there going to be a ramp or some
Yeah, like the other one.
creation of a path that at the right grade, whether that's included, because I don't think you could just use what exists.
Yeah, agreed, yeah.
Rick?
Yeah, the only other thing that I'll raise that wasn't brought up is that this is a seeker type 2 action, so the board should note that it's a seeker type 2 for the record, and no further environmental review need be done.
You need a motion on that, right? That we'll
You don't, but a motion is always helpful because then it's in the record.
I'll make the motion that we type it as a Class 2 seeker action.
I second it.
Oh, okay.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, there we go, you got it. For the record. Go ahead.
I do.
Go on.
Okay, I didn't know. Actually, okay, I know this house because years ago, back in early 2000s, my son was a friend of, a child of the owner. And I don't ever remember there being an addition. So I went on to the Orange County tax map site, and it does say that the house that was built in 1930 was 3,611 square feet. And under the improvements, there is nothing about an addition. So I asked Gary, and he said a building permit was issued in 2014 for an enclosed porch, 15 by 40. And then he said inspections were done up until framing, and the permit was extended until April of 2017, at which time the construction ceased and the permit was voided. So my question is, this 1,000 square foot addition, whatever extension of the house, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't have a CO right now.
He's writing, hold on.
In the meantime, good point. I went on and looked at the property description too, and it does say living area 3611.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you're getting at, if this board moves forward and approves, well, the applicant, are we giving them a CO by default, or they would still have to go to the necessary?
No, they,
Correct me if I'm putting words in your
No,
mouth.
no, that's, if this isn't, you know, a legitimate approved structure, then what are we doing?
right, and so it,
They can't represent that it is taking a portion of an existing structure and converting it if the existing structure isn't supposed to be there.
no matter
Let's see what Rick has
no matter
to
what this board approves, if the 1,000 feet is not legal, then Gary will not give it a certificate of occupancy to include that 1,000 feet. But it's much better planning to go ahead and raise the issue as Sandy has, and if it's determined it's not before you make your determination, then you're going to make your determination without that 1,000 feet.
Well, isn't there
So-
an open permit on the property, or is?
Not
there-
according to Gary.
There's a violation notice, there's no.
I was gonna say there is, yeah, the reason we're here is to cure violations,
Is what?
is to cure violations.
But the violation is because the shul is already operating, correct?
And then, yes, and at this moment, we have an agreement with the building inspector. Sorry. At this moment, we have an agreement with the building inspector that that portion is not being operated as a shul. So the private residence, of course, is continuing, and uses pertaining to a private residence are continuing, but the shul is not being used because of the issue that you brought up.
But isn't there part of the residence that shouldn't be occupied at all because it does not have a CO?
And they're not occupying it. That's part of our agreement with Gary.
They're saying that they're not currently using that 1,000 square feet.
Right.
Was it operated as a shul at one point?
Yes.
So that leads me to my next question. Is this going to be, like the previous application, is this going to be a men's and women's shul?
If you don't know, if you're not sure.
Yeah, it would- well,
if you're not sure, we'll figure it
It
out.
will need to be included in the narrative, though, as we
Right.
move forward.
Right. There's-
And also, is there going to be a mikveh? No mikvahs?
Yeah, but just flush out all the details as you move forward.
Yeah, certainly we'll provide the board with a full scope of the uses that are intended, the hours of operation, and exactly what the ultimate vision is of the operation, or as a use of a place
Okay.
of worship.
But that, and I don't, maybe this is semantics, again, Rick. If, again, that portion of that building is not legal, how is it a conversion then? Aren't we basically starting from scratch and saying they're adding it?
I think what you do, by analogy of what you do with other things that aren't permitted. For instance, if somebody wants to pursue something that also needs a zone change in order for it to occur, you still review that application, but you can't approve it at the end until that zone change is in effect. So I think here, the applicant wants to proceed, the applicant obviously controls. If the applicant wants to say, well, let me put a stop on this, let me clear this up, and then I'll come back, or they can ask you to review it, but you can't give an approval for anything that includes that 1,000 square feet until that is considered under Gary's reasoning to be livable area or usable area for shul.
Okay.
So, there's no problem with continuing with the application, but there's a hard stop before you could ever vote to approve it.
Okay. That's my questions for now.
Good. Anybody? Yeah, what's? Oh, you're good? Okay. Good. Anybody else? The applicant, you guys understand where you need to be for your next submission?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time tonight. Have
Thank
a
you
good night.
very much.
No further business, I'll offer a motion to close.
A second.
Don't all hop in on that one. All in favor? Aye.